Hi, I am Dee Dee Jones.
And I'm Stan Copeland. And just like I hoped we would, we've got Randy Austin back with us for a second time.
Thank you.
Randy, thanks for joining
us. You're welcome. You're most welcome.
One of those questions, I said I had questions.
I love it.
I want you to talk to us a little bit about your experience in church. I mean, here you are, a Christian singer, you songwriter, you write, you lead worship. That hadn't always been the case, I guess.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like the church has rejected you as a gay man?
Absolutely. So that was the part for me about 6 years before I came to Lover's Lane. I had been face-to-face. So let me back up. Before that, I participated once in it was called The Voice of Pride. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like American Idol, but it was for the LGBTQ plus community. Yeah. And it was kind of a singing competition, like a sing-off type of a thing. And I participated in this competition because there was a cash prize at the end of it. You could record a song. They were going to fly you around to, these other events. And so I got out and performed in this competition. I did this competition. Well, I won. And
that does not surprise me.
Well, I don't know. The competition was amazing, but I did win. Well, when you are actively working in a non-affirming church, and you are traveling the world in churches that are also not affirming, and you are at that point in time, for all intents and purposes, in the closet, that is not a really good thing to do, especially when the internet at that time was really catching on from a searching perspective. Right. I think Dee Dee probably would be able to attest to this as well, but sometimes individuals are not always as on fire for you and as excited for you as they make you believe they are, and they like to search your name and see what you're doing and find all the bad dirt on you. And people were literally searching my name, and they would go and find where I had won this Voice of Pride for Dallas, and would send it to the pastors of churches that I was about to go sing for or worship at. Wow. And that was something that haunted me for a very long time. And just to be completely transparent about it, I denied it. I, at that point in my life, was not ready to come out of the closet. But about 6 years ago, and this was, I think, around 2008 that all of that was going on. About 6 years ago, I was working for a church, and it came back up again. And as I was sitting there, there's this point in time, and I know y'all can probably attest to this as well, but you hit a certain age and all of a sudden things really don't matter as much as they used to.
You just say all the things.
You just say all the things. Exactly. Yep. And I think I kind of hit that moment, and I was like, why am I sitting here worrying about what this church is saying about me or thinks of me if they don't feel like God's calling on my life is enough? They have to worry about and get in my bedroom or in my home or in my personal life versus watching what God is doing and watching the results of what God is doing through my ministry. Why does it have to go to a perverse place to be, for me to prove my relevancy? And I didn't understand that. And I would say it certainly vexed me. I was definitely angry about it for a while, but I felt at that moment, because I wasn't going to deny it anymore. And the church pretty much at that point said, we can't have you on staff. We can't have you being a part of our worship if you're gay. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to be something that we're going to be able to condone. Right. And so, at that point, again, all the things, were in my mind, and I was okay with that. And I was totally fine walking away from the church in the respect of, a building, a people, a certain congregation. Right. I never lost faith in God through that. I want that to be very clear. I never lost faith in God. I think at times God's probably thoroughly disappointed in how his people act to other people. I can't speak for him, but I have to imagine that's how he is.
I think that's a pretty good guess.
I would have to just imagine it. But it led me, as I mentioned in the last show, it led me to country music. And I had decided during that time that I was done with the church as far as people. And I didn't want anything else to do with it. I was tired. I was tired of having to fight for what I felt like was right. I was having to fight and prove who I was. And even though I have a resume, which I don't even talk about most of the time, that could, stand up for me and what I have the ability to do, I just was tired of working for people that didn't get it. That just were not connecting what God was about. And so fast forward, COVID hits, and we're all sitting at home and scrolling through social media way more than we should have probably ever been doing. But faithful to her time slots, Dee Dee was on Facebook and talking and singing and encouraging individuals constantly. And she and I were friends, and so I would keep up with what she was doing. Well, then that was coming up more. So the way those algorithms work, the more you visit, the more you'll see from that person. And so I would see her post come up. And then the church obviously COVID held on way longer than we wanted. The church here got involved in the streaming services. And so I would watch these services as well. And Dee Dee made it very clear that all people were welcome in the services. And so I had kind of reached a point. I have had an involvement in church my entire life. I cannot remember a time other than 6 years previously where I was not actively involved in ministry of some sort. And it was just like sort of that piece of my heart was missing. And I was so miserable, just to be completely honest. It was misery for me because I can sit down today and write you a country song. That is so easy for me to do. I could do that right now. I could write you a pop song. I mean, it's gonna, it's
145
exactly, and call it done. And it'll be 2 minutes long and we're good. The part for me that was missing was, and that's all good. That's all fine. Those things help pay the bills, right? But the piece that was missing for me was what I felt like my calling was, which was to write songs that change people's life. That was what was missing. A country song won't change their life. Maybe it'll change their day, but not their life. And I was missing that piece. So being in the church that I grew up, we would have called it backslidden. That's what it, you somehow lose God if you don't show up at church. I don't know how that works, but that was the rule. You have to go to church or you're going to, you're going to go to hell. That was pretty much how it was. And so not having attended church for at least 6 years on Easter, I had made up my mind. I said, I'm going to go to church. I'm going to be that Christian. I'm going to show up at Easter and I'm going to show up at Christmas. Those were the two services I had made up my mind. At a minimum, I was going to go. And I came on Easter morning. To Lover's Lane, to Crosswalk. And I had texted Dee Dee. I messaged you, I think, on Facebook. I said, hey, I'm coming to see you for Easter. And she was, Dee Dee, just, oh my gosh, you made my day. I can't wait. I want to see you. I felt immediately like I was going to be welcomed. But I knew Dee Dee, at a minimum, I thought, I'll see her. We'll say, hey, no big deal. And so I showed up, got myself together. And I'm not, this is not to brag on myself. I mean, there have been moments I have sung in front of 20,000 people easy at one time. Cakewalk, I've sung in a room of 10 people, complete cakewalk. Not nervous, no fear.
It's different.
I walked up to the church, to the door, and I had butterflies in my stomach.
Oh my goodness.
My heart was racing. It was like the first time I had ever stepped on stage to sing when I was a kid. Just all the feels were taking over. And about that time, Veronica opens the door, and has this huge smile on her face. And I don't think I'm calling her out. I think, I assumed Veronica was a lesbian. Just assumed that she was.
That'd be a good assumption.
Yeah, it's a good assumption, right?
Yep.
But this huge smile, and assuming that Veronica was a lesbian, she was serving in the church. She was opening doors for people and
She's
greeting
our number one usher.
people.
Yeah, that's true.
Greeting people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I immediately calmed down inside just by seeing Veronica, but then feeling like, okay, not only did I feel welcomed by Dee Dee online through Facebook Live and then messaging her, I knew I was welcome when Veronica opened the door.
Yeah, yeah.
And fast forward, for time's sake, here I am today. What was going to be Easter for me turned into the next Sunday and the next Sunday and the next Sunday, and I haven't missed church unless...
And you joined.
Yeah, and I joined the next time it was open. But not because I felt obligated, obviously.
Yeah.
It was because I finally found a place for me that I felt like, okay, it is true. There is a place where all people can connect. No, it's not for everybody, right? The thing I loved about Lover's Lane is this is not a gay church, right?
No.
This is not a straight church. It's just
God's
church.
church.
It's for all people.
Yeah.
And that's been the message that I've heard about Lover's Lane from day one when I showed up to various messages through new membership luncheon that you spoke at, where you talked about the history of the church and kind of how the AA and the recovery group started years and years ago. And even that was confirmation for me, even though you and I haven't had detailed conversation up until that point. I was like, this is a church that is about all people. Yeah. And that to me is where the church has gotten it wrong so many times. They've made it about a certain group or a certain way or believing a certain belief only, instead of just saying it's for all people who want to be a part of God's church.
Right. And in full transparency, I've been here 25 or so years. And, I've seen transition in the church and in my own life and in the staff. But I remember when we started having an influx of LGBTQ plus people, and many, in hearing their stories, because we were interviewing everybody who's joining the church, and so many of those stories were about how they'd been hurt by church, and we started calling some of our folks church refugees. These people have been hurt by the church, and here they are taking a risk. And we started dealing with, we're not going to deny the waters of baptism to anybody because those are the Lord's waters. And we're not going to deny Holy Communion to anybody because that's the Lord's table. And then we had to deal with, can LGBTQ plus people serve in Sunday school? Can they, teach youth, all of these things? Can they be in worship? And I just kept coming to the place that obviously that person right there is filled with the Spirit of God. There's no question about it. So if God has affirmed this person in such a way and confirmed the ministry that person is a part of, who would we be to deny?
Absolutely.
And yet I can still go back in time 20 years and think about how these transitions started. But it really has to do when you meet Randy. When you meet a person and you fall in love with that person and who they are in their walk with the Lord, and then you realize we're all in the same community and the same fellowship.
Absolutely.
And it has to be one that not only are we welcome, but we open the doors to others we haven't seen yet.
Absolutely.
And I do grieve sometimes when the church gets that wrong. But I also don't want to be a hypocrite and would say that in my past I've gotten it wrong.
Yeah, and so have I.
Yeah.
Even in my own community, I have gotten it wrong and judged things that were happening around me. Why? Why do we do that?
Yeah. But we do. You're right. Oh, this is great. Well, Dee Dee, do you want to ask your buddy anything?
Well, I think my question that I'm constantly asking is, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
You know, because what I love is that we are at a place. You know, I tell people this all the time, is that the thing that I can say now is that you don't have to be afraid to go to church anymore.
Right. Exactly.
You don't have to wonder where to go anymore. You don't have to wonder if you will be accepted anymore. We have that right here. So where do we go with that from here?
Here's what I will say. From my perspective, this church in particular is getting it right. Now, will we make mistakes? Absolutely. Right?
Yeah.
And you always say, we're not the perfect church, but if you're looking for a church that's working really hard to try to get it right, this is it.
Yeah.
And as long as we stay focused on that, trying our best to get it right, we will. I think what is going to be the difference maker is for individuals in the gay community, the LGBTQ plus group, they have to learn to accept that there is a place for them.
Yeah.
And then get out of their own way, because at that point, they're going to keep digging up from the past, all of the past hurt and the things that have happened in the church that kept them from going to church.
Yeah.
It makes for a great excuse of why you don't go.
Yeah.
You know, versus saying, here is a place where I am going to be accepted. This is not a gay church. This is God's church. This is a church. This is what we come for. It shouldn't be about any other specific agenda except for coming and getting closer to God and being a part of a family that will love you unconditionally. And that, to me, is the most important part. So I think while, you know, how do we get the word out? How do we get a message? That certainly is a great topic, and it's definitely a great planning opportunity. But what does the church need to do different? I'm not sure that it's anything, in my opinion, just from a lay member out, because I have felt the love from this church. I think at that point now it's up to the community to say, hey, I've got to go understanding that they're not perfect, but I also have a place I can be and be loved.
Safe.
And I'm safe.
And you're safe.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, at some point, I think we all get to the point that we need to say to those who come our way, where are you going to serve? You know, instead of being a consumer, you know, when are you going to become a servant here with us?
Yeah.
You know, Veronica, I'm glad you brought her up because she's such a good example of somebody who found her niche of service. And she's touched so many lives, and you're a great example.
She has, 100%.
So we are so glad that you've come back with us, and we're certainly glad that Randy came back for a second time.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll look forward to hearing you singing on Sunday.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in to Hope Connection.